Okay, we're back. So, first time as a podcaster, let me tell you, very, very, these are new skills. Let's just say that. We're learning new skills here. Anyways, let's begin. Hi, welcome to Data Diasporas. My name is Melissa. I thought that it might be really important to share a bit more about myself before we dive into the depths of data and the depths of data diasporas. For this episode, I really want you to get a sense of who I am and why I feel like this podcast is important. I've had this idea around data diasporas and what it means to develop a sense of identity and belonging through technology for many years. In fact, about 20 years ago, I was in a anthropology and sociology course called Migration and Diaspora Studies, and part of my dissertation, well, the core of my dissertation was to focus on this idea called Second Life. It was called Second Life at the time as technology, the internet was ramping up, and especially social media. And there was this theory, this premise that we would have an alternate identity based on how we showed up in different spaces online. And I found that extremely fascinating. I have really, for the entirety of my life, been really intrigued and fascinated by this concept of identity and how we see ourselves, how others see us, and who gets to define that reality. So I really consider this podcast to be an evolution, a long, slow, albeit progressive evolution of some of those ideas. And I see you as the listener, the participant, and even a co-scientist, if you will, social scientist, if you will, as a part of this experiment. I really see and hope that this space becomes a living laboratory where we are all bringing to the table our ideas, our experiences, our reflections, and seeing how those compounded together really get us to a better understanding of what's at the core of data when it comes to technology, what's at the core of belonging, how communities are formed, how we see ourselves, and who we define ourselves to be from the perspective of this new developing culture of modern society. I'm drawing a connection between identity and data because I really feel like we are constantly scripting our life experiences by the way that we are showing up digitally. So whether it's a platform that we choose over another for search, for communication, for entertainment, we're really shaping our reality in real time. And I'm not a technologist by training, but I do like to research a lot, and I haven't really come across these kinds of conversations and discussions that look at how we are as individuals showing up in digital spaces and who we are becoming as a result of those experiences that we have across technology, across the internet. And now with the advent and introduction and quick, rapid advancement of artificial intelligence, I see this even more of a critical conversation. And I welcome you to join me in this discussion. A little bit about my background and how I came across some of this thinking. I mentioned a bit before about a program, an academic program that I was in, but once I left that program, and since then, it's been almost 20 years, as I mentioned, I've been working in philanthropy as a consultant and advisor, working with foundations and private families and grant making organizations and entities, looking at how to really develop and design programs and strategies with a keen focus on impact within the community, but making sure that that's done with a lens of equity as well as emergence. So allowing for community to have some stake in the decisions that are being made based on the structure of the grant opportunities and the programs that those foundations and families are supporting. So that might look like different levels of participation of young people, community leaders. And when I speak about community leaders, not only looking at the heads of institutions or C-suite individuals, but also looking at, your son's soccer coach or football, depending on where you are in the world, or the student president at the local middle school. Leadership really shows up in so many different ways, whether it's a formal title or not. And within that leadership, we have an opportunity to really see how individuals will develop their personhood, the qualities of their values, and how that contributes to the makeup of society and of community. And that's really where a lot of the motivation and inspiration for my work has been focused on the participation of community members, their agency being recognized and identified as a key component for the impact of the programming that's being supported, and overall looking at equitable solutions and opportunities across communities. I'd say maybe about 8-9 years ago, when I was leading a team to produce a conference on education, I came across one of the most inspiring books that I read, called The Algorithms of Oppression by Dr. Safia Noble. And it really led me to thinking about how this new system, this new technology, and these approaches are really helping or hindering how we are shaping our perspective of the world and of each other. From that, I really started to dig in deeper, looking at algorithms, looking at technologies, looking at data, and recognizing that there was this component of leadership, of education, of social understanding that was so intrinsically tied to how we were working or playing across the internet. And that really had a profound effect on the way in which I wanted to approach the work that I was doing. While I was working in strategy and program design as a consultant and advisor, a lot of the areas of focus were education, workforce development, economic mobility, community development, arts and culture as well. Working within US organizations and institutions, but looking across the globe for programming opportunities. And so I was working not only in the US, but I did a lot of work as well across the African continent in several countries. Prior to that, I'd worked in Latin America, I'd worked in Europe, as well as the Caribbean. And so I constantly was thinking about this impact and influence of these zeros and ones shaping our understanding of each other, whether we had direct and personal contact or whether we were getting our understanding and learning stories about families and communities across the other side of the world. And so that's where I wanted to start this conversation with you, having an opportunity to think about data from a perspective of identity and diasporas from the opportunity for our individual data to travel. And looking at this podcast not as just a means to share information or learn information, but for us to be exploring how communities, how individuals, how technology is shaping our idea and our understanding of ourselves and of each other, and shaping the future truly of society. Technology is a reflection of our histories and our values, but we're constantly questioning and constantly challenging our right to belong. And that's why I think this podcast is really important. And I'm hoping that through the mechanisms that we will explore together, we'll have an opportunity to examine and gain different insights to the world in which we exist. We'll bring to the forefront ways in which technology and data is challenging our understanding of ourselves and of each other, surfacing some of those tensions around the stories and the narratives that we hear and we see, and even framing or reframing our understanding of the world through new lenses. I'm hoping that the podcast becomes a space for anyone who's interested in any of these topics, but I could really see a keen, attraction, or a space that will attract the interests of course, technologists, designers, product teams, educators, learners. I'm also thinking that this space would be really could really benefit from the contributions and perspectives of artists, futurists, and cultural workers, as well as philanthropic leaders and individuals who are committed to social impact. Not only am I thinking about the perspective of who might be interested from a learning or business standpoint, but also community organizers and movement builders who are really at the forefront of developing and designing the ways in which we see society and also can imagine a future that we don't readily see in the current moment. For you as a listener, I'm hoping that this is an exciting journey, that you do find this space to be exploratory, that you find it to be adventurous, but that there's also a space for you to develop and challenge your own understanding of why data is important. That we learn together how data is shaping stories and shaping the values in which we are existing and relating to each other, and also how it's setting up structures and infrastructures in the world around, in the world around us. I'm hoping that there's more conversations around agency and ownership and integrity of data and how it is formulating our identities in a world that's more globalized. Well, that's globalized and more connected. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention how integral our data is to AI systems and their functioning. And it's important for us to explore the assumptions that come with the data that's being defined and who has a right to define that data and determine what it means, because it's embedded in everything that we do now online and through digital structures. I have my own personal interests, and I'm hoping as well to learn from all of you. And I'm also hoping that my own life experiences And some of the stories that I will tell will help to illuminate some of the ideas and also give us an opportunity to share and to interact with each other. And so I see a broad range of directions in which these conversations might go, but I know that there are some key aspects of data diasporas and the thinking that has gone into the development of this first season. And I'm looking to bring in conversations around what research exists, what are educators saying about data and identity, how are artists, cultural workers, designers, technologists really playing with and molding, shaping and informing these technologies through the data that's present. There's going to be some tension involved. I can already imagine conversations around, you know, as I mentioned before, what data is perceived as valuable and to whom? What is it saying? How is it shaping stories and narratives? And who's telling those stories from the perspective of the individual who's represented by that data compared to others who may be receiving that data, processing it, and making decisions and determinations from what it's presenting. So welcome to this modern research platform. I know and I'm hopeful that there's going to be opportunities for thought leadership to be presented. There are amazing authors and scholars and researchers. I've named just one who has influenced some of my early thinking, but there are so many out there, and I'm hoping that we'll have an opportunity to speak with them directly, to speak with you as community members, and to also form and formulate stronger relationships and bonds from some of the ways that you might interact with this podcast. I'm hoping that it will spark your interest and imagination in ways that you too want to participate in this experiment, whether it's through sharing your own stories, commenting on topics, participating in ways in which we would love to better understand how you define data, your own data and your own identity through data, how you're seeing it reflected or influencing the community around you. Every episode, I'm hoping, will really spark not only greater understanding, but newer questions for us to ask. And I'd love to come back to you each and every week, sharing with you what I'm hearing and seeing from the community as well. So hopefully that gives you a sense of some of the ways in which I'm envisioning this space. But as I mentioned before, I very much ground a lot of the work that I do in participation and in emergent design. And so I'm imagining and I'm expecting that this space will evolve and continue to develop and design itself because we will be in collaboration with each other. Thank you so much for joining and welcome to Data Diasporas.